Emperor Montezuma II was one of the Aztec Empire's most powerful but controversial rulers. He led the country at a time of internal crisis. A series of natural disasters and famines rocked his people, while vicious infighting over the succession of his throne led to several notable conflicts. But Montezuma's biggest challenge came not from his own people, but from the Spanish conquistadors, foreign invaders who began to see him as a threat to their conquest of the Aztec territory. In 1520, the Spanish conquistadors were on the cusp of completely destroying Montezuma's weakened Aztec empire. Montezuma was captured, and he knew all too well about the greed of the Spaniard invaders. It's worth mentioning that the Spanish conquistadors were obsessed with gold. In Spain, fantastical legends about the gold of indigenous tribes had become commonplace. Everyone was talking about the gold hidden in the Americas. Even today, treasure hunters around the world are enamored with the idea of native gold. Spain itself lost several tons of gold during their conquest of the Americas. Some people believe that there's still gold hidden at the bottom of the world's oceans. Spain's dreams of making millions from Aztec gold certainly weren't squashed when they made contact with the advanced Aztec tribes. Montezuma regularly gave the Spaniards large gifts of gold, praying that parting with the treasured artifacts would stop the Spaniards from conquering his people. But it actually had the opposite effect. Constant gifts of gold from the Aztecs further supported the Spanish belief that the tribe held untold riches. Conquistador Hernan Cortez claims that Aztecs viewed their invaders as gods and lavished them with gifts and celebrations as they marched into the capital. We don't have the Aztec side of the story, so we're not sure if Cortez is actually telling the truth. After all, even his own contemporaries had a low opinion of Cortez, who wasn't actually authorized to conquer the Aztecs in Mexico. One description called him ruthless, haughty, and mischievous. Nevertheless, history is told by its winners. This brings us back to Montezuma, who was captured after the Spanish took the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. While imprisoned, he heard rumors that the Spaniards were planning to demand a ransom for his release. He immediately dispatched runners who braved the deserts with one mission: hide the Aztec gold so that his captors couldn't steal it. Montezuma's plan was successful, but saving his empire's gold came at a price. The Spanish conquistadors were known for their brutality. We don't know exactly how Montezuma died, but some sources suggest he was publicly executed for, according to Cortez, treason. Despite his death and the destruction of the Aztec Empire, Montezuma did succeed in saving the lives of many of his runners and preserving the last wealth of a dying empire. Historians disagree on where his treasure may be hidden. Some theories hold that the runners took to the mountainous caverns in the American Southwest. Others say the runners didn't have enough time to travel so far, instead opting to toss the tons of gold into causeways and rivers near their capital. That is, until a prospector washed up on the shores of the Colorado River. If you want to shore up your chances of seeing more videos like this one, you gotta let the YouTube algorithm know. Give us a like and a follow to keep seeing more stories about the history of gold. James White had been prospecting with several other men when they were attacked by a native tribe. The entire party was wiped out except for White and one other man. They had to think quickly to save their lives during this fight. The man and his companion tied logs together to create a raft and drifted down the dangerous rapids of the Grand Canyon. This act of ingenuity is what saved White's life. His partner, though, wasn't so lucky. After hitting a rough corner, the man fell off the raft and drowned, along with all of the duo's survival supplies. The prospector used the last of his strength to crawl inside of a cave somewhere near Rioville, a Mormon settlement along the Colorado and Virgin Rivers. Once again, his quick thinking kept him alive just a little longer. Shortly thereafter, natives discovered White near death. White appeared to be barely alive at all. He woke to the sound of footsteps and the bright lights of torches. Natives had entered the cave. Even more shockingly, he looked around and saw that he was surrounded by gold, silver, and turquoise artifacts. More gold than any prospector would ever expect to see in a lifetime, all in one place. Given his most recent experience with a brutal native tribal assault, we can hardly fault James for being afraid. He'd stumbled onto a secret treasure, he was close to death, and he had been surrounded by armed natives. But to his surprise, the natives didn't attack. Instead, they began to nurse him back to health. For weeks, trauma to his head kept him from remembering anything about what had happened, but piece by piece he recovered, and so did his memory. Eventually, he was able to regain enough strength to leave the area and return home. He'd occasionally tell stories to friends and family about the treasure he'd accidentally found and the kind natives who nursed him back to health. Newspapers reached out to White, desperate for more information about the treasure trove he'd stumbled into and the natives who had saved his life. The former prospector did several interviews which caused public interest in the story to skyrocket. Archaeologists even showed him photos of ancient Aztec artifacts, and White confirmed that they closely resembled the same golden items he witnessed in the cave. Treasure hunters in the area gathered and conducted dozens of expeditions over the next few years to find the massive gold hoard. But White never participated, and none of the explorations were successful. For over 3 decades, the treasure was once again lost to time. But this isn't the end of our story. The mysterious Aztec treasure didn't stay tucked away forever. In 1902, a prospector named Jake Johnson also suffered a near-fatal injury in the same part of the American Southwest. Do you see where we're going with this? He had broken his leg and was in rough shape, and he wouldn't have survived in the harsh desert climate if it wasn't for the intervention of yet another kind Native American. A man from the Paiute tribe and his wife found Jake somewhere near St. George, Utah. Slowly, they helped him recover from his near-fatal injury. The trio became close friends, but it didn't take long before Jake was able to return the favor to the man who had saved his life. One night, the Paiute man's wife was attacked by a wild cougar. The Native American was too far away to act, but Jake Johnson jumped right into the fray. He killed the beast before it had the chance to maul his friend's wife. The friendship between the prospector and the native only grew from there. After some time, he confided something to Johnson, a secret that might go all the way back to the destruction of the Aztecs centuries before. You're about to learn how Jake Johnson's story relates to the ancient Aztec treasure. If you're enjoying this story, please consider clicking that like button to let our team know you appreciate them. The Paiute native told Jake of a legend passed down through generations of his people. The legend goes that a large group of warriors, centuries before, had placed hundreds of unmarked boxes inside of a large cavern. They came from far away in the south and took thousands of slaves with them. All of the slaves were murdered, but the warlike natives who ascended to the cave remained there for quite some time, watching guard over their mysterious treasures. Months and years went by, and they eventually descended from the cavern, marrying Paiute women in the area and integrating into the tribe. As these men aged, they told stories about their homeland. According to them, they were part of a massive native empire. Their emperor had been captured, but ordered them to transport all of the treasure to a cave within Paiute territory. As the legend goes, this emperor promised to one day return and reward his warriors and the Paiute for watching his empire's treasures. But the emperor never returned. The treasure slowly became a myth passed through the Paiute tribe's oral history. If you've been paying attention, you might be able to connect the dots here. That emperor, the legend goes, was Montezuma II. He was never able to return and reclaim his empire's vast treasure trove, since he was executed by the invading Spanish conquistadors. But to the Paiute man who befriended Jake Johnson, the treasure was more than just legend. Jake Johnson, however, wasn't a member of the tribe. He hadn't heard these same stories growing up, so he was doubtful that there would possibly be a treasure of that magnitude hidden inside of a cave. Eventually, he began to consider the possibility, even if there was just a 1% chance that the man was telling the truth, wouldn't it be worth it to investigate? Jake sent a letter to his brother asking him to meet him in the area. Johnson's native friend had to think hard before leading an outsider to his tribe's most important secret. After a few days, he agreed to take Jake to the cave. But when Johnson's brother showed up, the Paiute native wasn't happy. In his mind, he had agreed to take one outsider to the Cave of Treasures, not two. To resolve the matter, he made a deal with them. They could take some gold, but only as much as they could carry by themselves. To make sure the brothers held up their end of the bargain, the Paiute blindfolded them for the entire journey. After 4 whole days of difficult travel through the desert heat, they left their horses. Still blindfolded, the native man led them through a steep climb until, finally, they felt the cool chill of cave wind on their backs. When they removed their blindfolds, they gazed upon a treasure that, to their knowledge, no other Western man had ever seen. They had very little time to look around. Their guide was already unexcited about bringing 2 outsiders to the cave, and commanded them to quickly load up as much gold as they could carry. Blindfolded once more as they traveled back down the mountain, the brothers rushed to a nearby town to sell their gold hoard. It is estimated that each man made around $15,000 from his share of Montezuma's treasure. In today's money, that's around $500,000. But the brothers weren't done yet. Like the Spanish conquistadors, their greed got the better of them. Almost immediately after selling their gold, they searched for the Cave of Treasure, but this time without the blindfolds and without their native guide. Do you think you would be able to locate the lost treasure for a second time? Right after the brothers sold their first batch of gold artifacts, bars, and coins, Jake Johnson and his brother jumped back onto the trail, confident that they'd be able to find the treasure again. But since they had been blindfolded during their last journey, their attempts to relocate the treasure were not successful. They must have tried dozens of times to find the lost Aztec treasure again, but to no avail. They were infuriated. They had been right there, inside a cave with more treasure than they'd ever seen again in 1,000 lifetimes. And yet, they couldn't crack the code to find it for a second time. They were forever locked out of finding that gold that the Aztecs passed to the Paiutes, and that one grateful Paiute man had showed Jake Johnson. Eventually, they gave up the search. They used their profits from the Aztec gold to purchase ranches and raise cattle. Still, the two men spoke of the mysterious treasure until the day they died. Johnson even published his experience in a local newspaper, the Salt Lake Mining Review. Now, we've introduced you to three men in this story. One, a powerful emperor desperate to save the remaining riches of his once great empire. The second, a prospector who awoke near death in a cave filled with ancient treasure. And the final man in our story, a prospector whose courage in the face of danger allowed him to lay eyes on the treasure that most of humanity believed was impossible. The future of Montezuma's treasure remains uncertain. To this day, treasure hunters from around the world scour the deserts of the American Southwest, searching for any hint of the millions of dollars in gold artifacts hidden in the dying days of the Aztec Empire. But as far as we know, only 3 Western men have ever gazed upon the hoard of gold and lived to tell the tale. Did Johnson really stumble onto the same Aztec treasure that Montezuma's runners hid in a remote desert cave? Or was this just another Western legend? Drop a comment below and let us know. Want to hear about more legends of lost treasures? We're working on a whole series of these videos. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next video drops.